This is Herculaneum. This is where Raffaele is looking, in fact, right now. This is the seashore, and it's the terrace there. We're talking about it. I wanted to start out with Vesuvius. This is the culprit of the whole story we have, and it's an interesting volcano. Here, it's called a somma stratovolcano. So strato means that it has a high profile, and it's a somma stratovolcano because if you look on the right-hand side, you can see the old crater. That's the 79 crater. And you can see just how much of the mountain went off that day. In fact, if you do this right now to that cone, you can just see that most of the mountain went off that day. Coming out of that Somma crater, it's called, the crater which was created in the 79 eruption, you can see this, the modern crater. Now, I walked up here, as a lot of people have, and it's the modern crater is itself a circumference of a kilometer. It gives you an idea of just how big that ancient crater is, because if you look on the outskirts, that's the rim of the Somma crater, which was done in 79. So we see the volcano today in a very different way to the way they saw it in antiquity. In antiquity, this is what they saw. So this is from the House of the Centenary. It's a fresco. If you look at it, that's a mountain, which we think is Vesuvius. Vesuvius at the time was not looking like a volcano. So yes, they had hints that it was a volcano. And yes, there was a catastrophic earthquake in 62, 17 years before the eruption, but they didn't put two and two together, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. In fact, if you'd ask an ancient person what Vesuvius was famous for before 79, they would have said wine. So look there at Bacchus, or Dionysus is his ancient Greek name, and you can see Bacchus here, the god of wine. It was a really fertile, lovely area where lots of Romans had their villas. They had no idea it was coming at them. So we now know that the eruption wasn't actually on. It wasn't actually on set on the 24th of August. We have a really good idea that actually it was in October, and the prevailing wind was southeast, right? So you can see that Pompeii was hit from the very beginning, right? So at around noon, an ash cloud of 33 kilometers is shot up in the air, and we have a great description of this by Pliny the Younger, who was at Misenum. Do you see Misenum there, right by Neapolis, is modern Naples? Misenum, this is where the fleet was held. And at Misenum, he saw, the ash cloud. He described it as an umbrella pine. You might call it a parasol pine or a Mediterranean pine. And it went up 33 kilometers. And for 20 hours, it deposited on Pompeii 15 centimeters of lapilli per hour. 15 times 20, that's how much was deposited. But Herculaneum not. In fact, Herculaneum, they may have thought they got away with it. But 20 hours later, the ash cloud collapses. And then there's a second phase, the Pythian phase it's called. And within 2 minutes, Herculaneum destroyed suddenly, aggressively, traumatically. Gone. Covered in the first surge by 3 to 5 meters, and then successive surges up to 23 meters. This is a reconstruction of it. You can imagine what it looked like. Actually, that is only giving a small idea of how big that ash cloud is, right? So you can imagine the collapsing of that ash cloud very suddenly, causing a pyroclastic flow of temperatures up to actually 400 degrees Celsius, would have been catastrophic to Herculaneum. There were very different events that covered Pompeii and Herculaneum. They were looking at this really cutesy drawing of the 1764 excavation of the Temple of Isis in Pompeii. And what you're looking at there is a lot of lapilli. Lapilli are these little small pumice stones, which are very light. It's and easy to dig. So that's what digging Pompeii is like. It also has an effect on what survives or not, right? So here I give you this is a slide of one of my heroes. This is Wilhelmina Yashemsky, and she's digging in Oplontis, another really lovely site. And you can see those are the lapilli that she's digging out. First of all, hats off to all archaeologists who do this, right? So here she is excavating the viridarium of Oplontis. So that's what it's like in Pompeii and Oplontis. Lots of lapilli. I'm going to point out something really interesting. Do you see that on the right-hand side? That's red ochre. It's called cinnabar. It's an earth color, not very expensive. It's a run-of-the-mill color. Well, that red ochre was one time yellow ochre, and with the heat of the eruption, you can see a lot of this. It turns into red ochre. So while Pompeii was actually covered over with lapilli, which is it is easy to dig, and actually it doesn't seal anything. Herculaneum was covered over by this. It's really, in effect, 23 meters of concrete sealing the city like that, completely covering it. Every corner, I get asked a lot, every corner and every bit of every corner of everything is covered over by this cement, which means that it completely seals everything and it's almost impossible to dig. So the effects are different, and you can see by the bodies. So Pompeii is famous for its casts, right? So you can see there's the person on the left-hand side, gruesomely dying, and he would have been covered over by these lapilli, which would have been impacted on him and covered him over, making a nice mold, but not anaerobic. There is oxygen going inside there, which would have made his body decompose. So there's a mold there. And they discovered this in the 19th century, that when you start digging around bodies, there's a vacuum there. So what Fiorelli did in 1861 is he figured out you can dig a hole in there and then cover the whole mold into plaster, and you get a plaster cast. So here's the most recent plaster cast. You may have heard of it. It's a so-called master and slave. I don't think it's a master and slave. I think there are two men who were found there. And what they did is they just covered over the molds with some plaster, and you got this plaster cast of a body. This is perhaps the most famous. The Muelter, he's called. He was found in the Palestra of Pompeii. So this is what you get in Pompeii. The bodies don't survive. Nothing organic survives. It rots, but you can fill in with plaster to get impressions of them. With Herculaneum, it's gruesome. You can't do plaster casts of the Herculaneum bodies because actually they melted. And they don't leave an impression with lapilli because they weren't covered with lapilli. Instead, what you have is charred bodies, and you can see on the right-hand side, you can see a skull with, which had literally exploded because the brains inside boiled and they cracked open. Okay, and so we get things in Herculaneum like carbonized furniture. This is a couch. This is a staggering stool. And most, I guess, poignantly is this, the cradle from the house of Granianus, which came complete with skeleton and blanket. Now, where Raffaele is standing, actually, and I'm going to hand over to him now, is actually in the middle of the sea, because what happened was that the pyroclastic flow moved the coastline 400 meters. Anyway, there's the background to Herculaneum and Pompeii, how they're different, and how the different eruptions affected the way things are preserved. Over to you, Raffaele.
Thank you very much, Eireann, and welcome to this lovely day here at Herculaneum. Well, where I'm standing with me and Alessandra, we are overlooking the stunning view of the archaeological site of Herculaneum that we were waiting a few months to get the permission of this virtual tour. So we are so excited, and I'm so glad that I'm here with you showing one of the most incredible Roman archaeological sites in all the world. What we see is just 1/4 of the wall extensions of the Roman city of Herculaneum. That was way smaller than Pompeii, with roughly 5,000 people living here. And what we can get from here we have a perfect view of the modern city of Herculaneum, which is covering 3/4 of the ancient one, placed 24 meters below the modern Herculano. What does it mean, the word Herculaneum? Actually, the city was founded roughly in the 7th century before Christ, when the region Campania was under the control of Greeks from the city of Neapolis, the new city, Napoli, and the Etruscans and local communities called Oscans or Osci. Later on, after a few centuries of a Samnite domination, the city of Herculaneum was conquered by the Romans from the 2nd century before Christ, and definitely started to be a Roman colony in the 80 BC, after the big war of Silla that destroyed a lot of Roman municipio that helped the rebels actually in the 1st century before Christ. Herculaneum is placed, we have unfortunately this gate, but you can see that Herculaneum is facing the beautiful island of Capri and the Sorrento Peninsula, a perfect luxury holiday spot today, but also in the Roman time. Don't forget that Capri Island was the place where the Emperor Tiberius moved the government of Rome for 11 years up there, and to the other side, the island of Ischia and the Bay of Naples. So Herculaneum is way closer to Napoli, but was not so big as Pompeii, that was a commercial port, while Herculaneum was a luxury residential place. But let me tell you, the 80% of the inhabitants here, they were liberti. That literally means freed slaves. So who lived in this part of the world? Well, people with a lot of money, merchants, politicians, and in the 1750s, the archaeologists found the great villa of Papyrus that later I will show you where it's placed. And I'm telling you that in a couple of weeks, we will start finally after 40 years, the excavations again of Villa dei Papiri. The owner of that villa was supposed to be the father-in-law of Julius Caesar. And from this other side, you can get a typical Roman layout of a city with the vertical streets, the so-called Cardini, and the horizontal roads, Decumani. Where people are entering through the gates, that was the ancient city walls. The Romans living here, they did not use anymore the ancient walls after being a Roman colony. That's why a lot of Roman families built rich luxury houses facing the seaside above the city walls. As you can see, the House of Dives or the House of Albergo, the hotel on the other side. Just below the city walls, we have 2 terraces. That one to the right, called of Marco Nonio Balbo, that was one of the most important patron of the city. To the right side, he paid for the building of the suburban Bathhouse, one of the most interesting places I've been inside as a researcher. And it's a huge and beautiful example of a Roman bathhouse with a not natural steam water, but with a typical samovar system. While to the left corner, above the docks, the holy terrace with the temples dedicated to some of the most important gods in the area over here, and unfortunately, down to the ancient shoreline, that later we will show you something my professor in the 1980s discovered. 300 bodies, an upside-down boat, and the body of the sailor inside. So when Herculaneum was discovered, and let me tell you that Herculano was discovered first, how can be that a city so luxury, so important, so great as here was completely disappeared for thousands and thousands of years? The reason was the tragedy of the eruption. The tragedy of the eruption gave us the best chance for an archaeological preservation. Imagine 24 meters of literally mud we say today, but the real word is lar, which is a mix of volcanic material from the slopes of the Mount Vesuvius mixed with some rains and also local lands together, so hard. Comparing the tufa stone, it's even harder, and was a perfect place later on for a new life. There were some refugees, and we know by many written fonts that the refugees of Herculaneum could escape to the famous quarter of Naples called Fulcellensis, or well, the modern Forcella, where we have one of the most famous pizzerias called Da Michele. So we know that some of people from here could escape, but who lived the city? Only people who could reach other areas in the first 3-4 hours from the beginning of the eruption, because otherwise there was not anymore a chance to leave this incredible luxury resort. You can see now there the Mount Vesuvius in all of its beauty. We are living just at the feet of this volcano. And why we live here and why 1 million of people are living in this corner of the world, nearby an active volcano, the most dangerous in the world, it's the volcanic soil. So fertile, so great for everything. This was the same reason that helped Greeks, Etruscans, 1,000 years ago to live just at the feet of this monster. The only difference is that at the 79 AD, nobody knew that the volcano was a volcano. It was sleeping for about 8 centuries. So no memory of a record, no memory of an eruption until the 79 AD. They had warnings for sure, like quakes, especially one under the time of Vespasian in the 62 after Christ, but they never imagined that something was coming like an eruption that had the power of 5,000 nuclear bombs of Hiroshima. And when the pyroclastic flow arrived the city of Herculaneum, imagine how dramatic was that moment. And that's why all the mud that completely buried the city preserved in the best way this incredible capsule, and was a lucky event that gave us the chance to discover this unusual archaeological site. In the 1709, a farmer was digging a well to get water for his land, and he stepped to find water 24 meters just below the modern layer of the city. He found the great 2 statues and some steps of the Herculaneum theater, which is still buried. Some days of the year, the archaeological part is still giving us the chance to visit with the original tunnels this incredible place. In the 1709 was not a good time for the excavations, because in all the Europe there was a problem, political problem, wars. And then when the political background of the city of Naples was quiet and calm in the 1734, Naples started to be the capital of a kingdom with King Charles, the Bourbon house. In the 1738, because he loved the archaeology with his wife, Maria Amalia from Saxony, they started the excavations of Herculaneum from the same well where the farmer found these beautiful statues, Piccola e Grande Herculanense, in the early 18th century. So everything started with Herculaneum, the Grand Tour. People they wanted to be here to visit Herculaneum. Imagine that was born also the Accademia Herculanense, one of the greatest museums showing for all over the world the beauty appearing from the mud. 10 years later, Pompeii was found, but imagine Pompeii was easier to dig. And let me tell you that truly, I'm digging over there, and a couple of months ago, digging in a modern city of Herculaneum, I could find a Roman villa placed outside the city walls. Literally, it's easy because you move pumice. But in Herculaneum, it's hard. That's why in the 1748, when Pompeii was discovered, the excavations here could go over for other 20, 30 years with the tunnels, but the material that you can see over there, that's the so-called large. That's so hard to dig. And literally, when you use a trowel or a pickaxe, actually you have the sound of the metal. That's why they stopped the excavations over here. A new city was built above, and again the excavations of Herculaneum appeared open air only at the end of the 19th century. And then along these centuries, many things appeared from this incredible archaeological site, like this corner there. Look in the warehouse of the city, underneath that modern arch, there is one of the most beautiful Roman villa ever found in the history. The villa of the papyrus that I was telling you in a couple of weeks. We will start finally the excavation to uncover it completely. All the beauty of the villa are stored at the archaeological museums, beautiful bronze statues, mosaics, and frescoes. And in particular, we found more than 1,200 scrolls of carbonized papyrus still under a big research campaign. And imagine like now, like a time machine, we are walking through this bridge, and literally we are inside the Cardo, the vertical streets of Herculaneum. We are not anymore in 2021, but we are at the 79 AD. Everything in this place was built before the eruption. The eruption literally put a lid above the city. So we are now 20 centuries ago, and we can see that the entire city of Herculaneum was completely made with the same material that destroyed life here. from the volcanic rocks of the stones, the so-called the basalto, up to the walls made of tufa stone and the bricks with the clay with the volcanic inclusions inside. So it's tragic, but the city was built with the same material that killed all of them over here. Comparing Pompeii, Herculaneum, it's not so big and there were not so many shops. But this is important because we can understand how was the Roman residential life. And where we are going, when was found this huge area, the archaeologists thought that was an hotel because it was so big, 1,500 square meters with a lot of rooms. But the last researchers could give us the idea to think that this was a private home with a huge peristelium. And in this corner, the University of Naples, in collaboration with archaeologists, thanks to the plaster cast technique or studying the seeds of the ancient plants, they could replant the beauty and the flora of the Roman life. Pomegranates or melograni, the typical fruit of the goddess Venus, the apple, mele cotugne, so called in Italian, perfect for a jam, as you can see now in the video, and the luxury and beautiful rose canine, the roses that Romans loved for the perfume, for the makeup, and also to make their gardens more attractive. Imagine that the Roman house had always two sections. One was public and one was private. Where in the private part of the house, called peristilio, literally means a porticos with the four sides, colonnades around, and the roof covering the four sides. So basically, you had no shades and you were repaired from the rain. And literally in this corner, we can see how advanced was the Roman engineering system, especially for the collection of the rainwater. We have in that corner the ceiling trying to collect the rainwater in this channel. And then, thanks to pipes, the water reached the cistern placed to the underground of this garden. This was not a drinkable water. For that, they had an incredible aqueduct built under the time of the Emperor Augustus that could bring water from Serino through all the cities placed down the coast and at the feet of the volcano that they called mountain, or well, son of Zeus, Vesuvius. So as you can understand, the region Campania is a region full of legends, myths, and stories. That was basically the culture of people living back then. Today we have an answer for almost everything. But in that time, any natural event for them was a god's action. The eruption was a god's revenge. And then Herculaneum, where the 80% of people were freed slaves, but so rich, they had beautiful houses facing the main streets with the typical benches where the clientes, they could sit, as I'm doing now here, waiting my shift before going and talking with the owner of the house. Because most of the time, the house was the business place of the family. In Herculaneum, we have also the chance to understand that the city had rooms at the ground floor used for shops or entrances of homes, and the upper floor with the windows other accommodations for the lowest class. And to be more attractive and to impress people, at the entrance of the homes, we can see extraordinary original mosaics still on the spot, made with a beautiful small tiny piece of tessera made of marble or basalt, and facing, overlooking the inside, where now is almost restored the atrium. That's why it's missing the impluvium, and usually with a garden on the back. We will show you also some of these homes later, but let me tell you that the city of Herculaneum, like any other city in the Roman time, they were not as we can see now. Well, let me tell you better. We can see now just stones, yellow or rough volcanic rocks together with the malta, the Roman cement. But everything in the past was completely covered with a nice and strong hand of plaster. Red at this level and white until the top. The white portion was used for political inscription, for advertising, writing graffiti. So the city was luxury and was so beautiful to see.
Brilliant. I'm going to show you a slide of that. Should I show you a slide of that? I'm going to show you just an idea. Just as exactly what you're saying there. So what you need to be picturing is a street that looks like that, but then look at the balconies that would actually have been covering over, the streets. And also this is exactly what you're saying, Raffaele. And that is on the bottom part, you have red covered over the simple red ochre paint and plaster. In the top part, you have white plaster, and you had a series of men called pictores. These are people who are actually painters who will paint advertisements or actually electioneering. There's a lot of electioneering going on. For example, in Pompeii, we read there's about 1,500 graffiti of them. All righty, so that's what we're looking at in the ancient times. And over back to you, Raffaele.
So in this other corner here, we have this incredible chance to see an original Roman staircase that is still intact, preserved, and is giving us the chance to understand that most of the homes, like in our modern cities, they had a staircase going to the upper floor. Most of the time, the landlord, the owner of the entire building, used to rent to some families the ground floor used for shops, and they were living upstairs. In this corner, in this crossroad, we have the chance to see one of the most famous Roman restaurants called Caupona, with a modern word adopted in the 18th century, thermopolium. That you can see the original table made of different pieces of marble together, rough marble, usually from other mosaics on the floor or pieces of columns together, creating this beautiful naive decoration where we have these pots called the dolium original, used to store prepared food, drinks, cold or hot. And imagine here drinking a glass of mulsum or maybe a spiced wine mixed with water, honey, rosemary, and bay leaf. Most of the people who were the clients, the customers of this place, were the lowest class, or merchants or sailors. The wealthy people had somebody cooking for them, somebody preparing food in their own home. So today is the opposite. We go to the restaurant, maybe if you have something to spend, otherwise we cook at home. Back then was completely the opposite way. And in this other corner, I want to show you something so interesting. Imagine if you are somebody coming from the province of Egypt, and then you have to pay in the local currency. How could you change the currency? Today we go in the bureau de change, or we have a credit card, which is automatic. But back then, you should insert as much coin as you have to fill the hole over here. It's incredible. Let me show you with a couple of euros, actually. So basically, you should to follow until the top, because most of the currency was in base of the weight of the metal. That could be bronze, could be silver, could be gold. It depends of the coin. And then in the last article of Archeological, which is an important scientific journal here in Italy, some researchers realized that the structure made of stone up over there, it's a Roman toilet. Quite weird. Where is the there? Well, it's fell down. So imagine there was another wall with the windows sticking from the wall and then arriving to this area of the sidewalk, and then a downpipe bringing all the liquami, the black water, to the main sewage system. Because Herculaneum, comparing the other cities, comparing Pompeii, the famous Pompeii, but let me tell you, famous just because it's nearby the Sorrento coast, and people wrote a lot of books, especially in the 19th century, but Herculaneum, it's where everything started. And Herculaneum had a sewage system very advanced. And here we can literally see how the city is working, how the archaeological excavations is going on. It's a UNESCO site from the 1997, but this road with the wheel tracks on the floor can still go for meters and meters to that direction. But we have a modern wall and a modern city placed above. Forever, that 3/4 of Herculaneum will be covered. You might say, why we don't knock down all the homes above over there? It's not possible. Ethical, it's not possible to move 40,000 people from their own accommodation from generations to make space for an archaeological site. And also, when you make an excavations, you will start a process of fading that you will never arrest anymore. So what we have is enough. It's better to preserve what we have instead to find new things. And also, the Cardo where I'm working, which is the road that is connecting us to the called the Decumano Massimo. Can you hear me now? Okay, I had a problem with the audio, I'm sorry. And this road is connecting to the main streets of the city. It's missing the forum. Alessandra is telling me that there is no audio. Eireann, if you can hear me, can you please say that the audio is working or not?
Hi, I hear you fine. We had a little bit of problems, but you're good to go.
Okay, perfetto. Thank you. Also, the city of Herculaneum has got not a real forum as Pompeii or Rome, a big square. The forum is a big square with all the political buildings and the main temple. But we have a road with this same function. But before reaching the Decumano Maximus, I want to show you a really interesting corner of the city. Most of people had not a private bath in their house, but they were the public bathhouses. And in Herculaneum, we have two stunning examples. The one placed outside the city walls called Suburban, and some other bathhouse placed right in the middle of the city. Where I'm standing, we are in a room called Latrina that was used in the Roman time as a public toilet area. Literally, this was the corner where people could do their services, their personal things, and the drainage placed just below the channel could collect all the water, and the black water actually to the main collector straight to the seaside. Maybe Eireann, do you have something? Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry. Do you know what? I love latrines like shockingly a lot. And here we have a picture of what latrines may have looked like. This is actually not from Herculaneum, but from Housted's. But you get the idea. So don't picture the green trousers; those are English. But you get the idea that you sit over, seats, and you have in your hand a tersorium. It's called. It's a sponge stick. Gruesome that it might sound, but they seem to have wiped themselves with sponge sticks, which they can then clean in the water channel, which you're going to be looking at there. But also in Herculaneum, this is what is super exciting, is that in the sewage system, which was excavated, I know one of you asked that question, they found little square pieces of cloth. So hallelujah, they didn't just wipe themselves with tersoria, but they also had little pieces of cloth which they would have used for themselves. They could also have used stones and as well as moss and things like that. But there you go, the sewage system. So I wonder if you can, there you go. I'm going to stop sharing. That's what you're looking at there.
Thank you, Eireann. So about the diet, these important research that they did through the sewage system could give us the chance to understand what type of food they had in their last meals. But in general, we know that the diet of the Roman world was most different from our modern perspective of life. Not so much meat at all, a lot of seafood, especially in this area because of the coast, because of this kind of job, the fishing, and a lot of vegetables and brown bread. We found in Herculaneum, like in Pompeii, carbonized loaves of bread. Because imagine the baker preparing bread during the eruption. They have to leave everything nearby the fire, and when everything was carbonized and the mud protected, after 20 centuries, when you go and dig a oven, you can find still what they were preparing 1,000 years ago. So seafood, seashells, and a lot of this info we got not just from the sewage system, but especially from the Roman art, the Roman frescoes and mosaics, especially the ones stored at the Archeological Museum of Naples. They are literally a beautiful menu of the Roman diet. And the public bathhouse was a place not just for, for the cleaning of your body, but also the best social meeting place of the Roman world. And we are lucky because Herculaneum placed 24 meters below the sea level. Sometimes the reception is not good, but here I can show you. the beauty of the original male section of the bathhouse. Welcome to this incredible place. So I'm standing right in the middle of the room that was used 1,000 years ago as a public section for the Roman bath. Usually the Roman baths, they had 3 rooms. One was the frigidarium, the cold section, used for massage. Also the calidarium, used for the hot steam baths. How could they heat the rooms? They had a special system of a double floor, like a camera d'aria, which suspensorial suspensions, they could support 2 floors, and the hot air walking from the underground literally could heat the floor and the entire room. So the vapor could be a problem in our modern spa. When you go in a spa, sometimes drops of humidity, the condensation. To avoid this issue, Romans could reach the ceiling and could drop on a both sides. And then above over there were shelves where you could leave your clothes, your bags, your personal objects. And especially in the bathhouse, the archaeologists found a lot of glass for young ones, podiums, and bones, needles, or the toga. And in these performances were all equal because they were naked. So in the public bathhouse, you had no chance to understand who was a senator, who was actually a sailor. And the only thing was the gold, the use of gold a lot. So we are going out because also there are few people. And I want to show you that in the male section, there was also the area for the palestra, for the exercises, for the gym, which is a huge squared area with the columns around, surrounded by a roof, and then people could do exercises here, and then after jumping inside the bathhouse in the different pools. So the Roman life was not so bad, especially one of my dreams is living in Herculaneum or Pompeii, but years and years before the eruption, just to understand how was the real life, how was the sound of their voices. And until the excavations of the ancient shoreline in the 1980, the archaeologists were quite, let's say, happy because there were not so many skeletons found in the city comparing Pompeii with 1,000 people who died. But unfortunately, when they reached the shoreline, they found this incredible tragic moment. More than 300 people together who died, waiting for helps that never arrived. So Herculaneum, we can literally say, is a ghost town. And in this corner over here, I want to show you the pipe system. So you can understand better what does it mean when the upper floor or the sewage system was working with this terracotta, this clay pipe, bringing and collecting all the water to the underground, reaching the seaside. And nearby there, we have the area where I can show you the underground sewage system with this huge channel, and 1/3 of the whole city has got a lot of these tunnels to the underground. Also, the area where we are, which is to the left side, still buried with tons of volcanic material. In the 1994, the archaeological campaign from the University of Naples, they did some tunnels and research inside, and they found the entrance of the Basilica, which is the court house in the Roman time, and they found the beautiful head of a god, the Aphrodite of Herculaneum, with a beautiful, still red hair color and blue eyes, because Romans, they love to paint the marble statues a lot. And over here, you have the chance to see the underground sewage system channel, which is a unique example in all over the Roman world. We need to go to Roma to see the cloaca or some areas of Naples. And this one here in Herculaneum. Stunning. And then from this other portion of the Cardo, we are reaching the Decumano Maximus that was used as the main shopping street, the main central area of the city. And looking the Decumano Maximus from the very left corner, you have the idea how extended was the city and the connection with the modern placed above. We're just moving from this area, and then you can have the view of the great Decumano Maximus, which is this long horizontal road with the columns, with the porticos to the left side, and then the modern wall supporting and helping the city placed above, while in the other section you can have the best view of how hard and how is the material still covering the city of Herculaneum. It's so hard to dig, but we are lucky because in this portion of the city, imagine half of the entire site is almost still buried, but here where I'm standing, I'm bringing you straight to the most beautiful hall that we can see today. The most beautiful example of a Roman fresco still on the spot. Welcome to the Sacello degli Augustali, the Augustus Cold Room, which is a holy area, 4 columns supporting the upper floor. Imagine statues of different emperors in this area, and the main room over there with a huge and beautiful, rich floor made with different and the most important marble from all the Roman Empire, used as a floor for the statues of the main god over here, Augustus, surrounded around there with the so-called fourth Roman style fresco, the panels representing Hercules in between Hera and Athena. So this is the city of Hercules. And in the most important temple representing the portrait of the emperor, you should also remember the foundation of the city. While to the right side, with this beautiful and real cinnabar color, the most expensive pigment of the Roman world, we have Hercules in this Greek pose with the club and the lion skin fighting versus the god Archeological. And around, surrounded by this beautiful blue color called the blue Egizio, and golden ornaments, peacock, symbol of luxury, we have above the ceiling still the original carbonized wooden beams. It's a unique chance to see an intact second floor for a so old building. And if we go closer to the columns, I want to show you a very typical and beautiful decoration of this type of pillar that it's also called a fake marble. If you see in this other corner there that Alessandra is showing you now, we have some beautiful shape that looks like arches. Imagine when everything was so bright, how beautiful was the contrast with the black and white, or well, this darkness and lighter pigment. And where I'm standing, and Eireann will help you better to understand with a few slides, we have this wall called the Graticium, which is a very cheap separé, a very cheap wall mixed with stones, wood, and just few malta. This wall was creating another chamber behind, where the archaeologists found the body of a person lay down on his bed. He could not escape from this place, and a few months ago, actually the found was years ago, but a few months ago, a big news appeared in all over the world, because the portion of a brain that exploded during the pyroclastic flow was found crystallized inside Vitrificato, the Italian word, in the plaster.
I think, Raf, this is one of the most exciting houses, shrines in all of this exciting city. So what you need to be looking at, this is called Opus Craticium in Latin, and it's a stud wall. It's just a very cheap stud wall. So the architect Vitruvius hates this because it's so temporary, but of course it survived here. Now look at that grill. Do you see that grill right there in the center? That tells us that actually this is a room, it's a chamber which serves as a kind of a prison. And we know this because there's a bed, and there's the bed, there's a slide of it from the other side, and it used to be encased in glass. It's a bed which had a body on it, which is now encased in glass. It had a small a small desk inside there, not much else. But what's exciting about it is this man. He couldn't escape the eruption because he couldn't escape this room. And he was enclosed in there. And then, yes, as you said, Raf, from your own university, the oldest public university in the world, this is Federico II, the University of Naples. We had Pier Paolo Petrone, who discovered the brain inside of this unfortunate fellow who's imprisoned in this chamber. And what they found is that the brain was vitrified, literally because of incredibly hot temperatures, then sudden cooling. And what he was able to do, and this is key, he was able to separate a brain cell. So we have actually a brain cell of the Herculaneum victims. Over to you, Raf.
Thank you. And I was reading some of the questions, the Q&A, and somebody was asking the name of the building. The name of this building is called Augusteum. The Augusteum is the entire area. Where we are is the whole of Augustales. Who were this company? It was like a kind of brotherhood, as we can say. Most of them were freed slaves, liberty. And over here, we have the name of the two brothers who paid for this structure, Proculus and Julianus. They paid for a dinner for the whole city when they opened for the first time the Temple of Augustus. What happened over here? Because that's an important question. The temple of a person, it's quite weird. We have the temple of gods, but why the temple of a person? Augustus was the first Roman emperor, and when he died, his son made his father a god. Actually, the cult of the emperor started with Tiberius, and in many cities all over the Roman Empire, in important cities, especially like Herculaneum, with the people closer to the imperial family, they were Augusteum, this building. So I think it's clearer now about what was used for this, and I want to reach now the Decumano Maximus. I want just wait, okay. And the other question was, what's the major trades in the city of Herculaneum? Well, here was a city placed nearby the sea, and placing a city nearby the seaside, you have the fishing. People was a sailor village, but don't forget that here there were people with a lot of interest all over the Roman Empire, especially the family of Marco Nonio Baldo. They were praetori, which is higher charge for the Roman emperor, just below the emperor in the other provinces of the Roman Empire, like Crete, Cyrene, or Turkey. So here, the major things was the political relationship, and also merchants, but not so much like in Pompeii. And where I am, I'm standing just at the entrance of the area called Augusteum. The beautiful ceiling, the so-called Roman Baroque, it's painted with a plaster, and that's the most important example to understand why the Renaissance later on in the 14th, 15th century was born. Because even in Rome, there were structures painted in this way. And in particular, this kind of decoration was of the time of the Emperor Nero. Over there, this representation of a person laid down on the side, a young man with the so-called logobolon, it's a very weird word, was used to catch the rabbit in a wood, in a forest. And that type of decoration was used a lot nearby the sarcophagi, the Roman tombs, and also in a decoration of public buildings like this. So we are literally standing now to the most important shopping streets of the city, where all the shopping activities, they were to the left side, behind the pillars, and right in the middle here, the channel for the public water reaching to the underground of this place, the seaside. And because of the city of Herculaneum, like Pompeii or the other areas, Stabia or Naples here, they had paintings nearby the walls with some inscriptions. And here we have one of the best case of an advertisement and a price list. Also above over there, we have the figure of a god, and just below, at the cucumas, the inscription, and 4 different jars with different currency, so different price. from the cheapest wine you could buy the most expensive. And the currency back then was asse, also sesterzi, but it depends how was the quantity of metal. And just below over here, we have an inscription that unfortunately is not anymore perfect that few years ago, but it's written Nola, N-O-L-A. It's an important city, placed 40 minutes today by car to Herculaneum. But that means that at the time of the eruption, because we found this inscription here, and the inscription was telling us that you could move from Herculaneum to Nola for a gladiator's fight. So this one here was the advertisement for a gladiator's game to the amphitheater of Nola. Like we go to different concerts, they did the same for gladiators games. And the closest amphitheater from here was the one in Pompeii, the oldest amphitheater made of stone of the Roman history. And I'm standing in between one of the most famous cold caves of Herculaneum. We are in between the fauces, which is the entrance of the Roman house, the house of the Black Salon, Casa del Salone Nero, with the stunning impluvium right in the middle used for the collection of rainwater. But what is great is this door, the original carbonized wooden door, open, smashed nearby the wall. So now the question is, the family of this house left the house open, or the pyroclastic flow when it came through the Vesuvius through here, smashed everything and killed people inside? We are still waiting for the answer that I guess we will never get any more info. It's extraordinary because in a city like this, we can literally recreate step by step the last moments of life of people here. And as a different other shops, we had somebody making lead, the so-called plumbarius, which is the shop with some modern copies of statues of the god Dionysus with a panther skin and a real panther under his foot. And we are in this portion of the city where we have this incredible example of a Roman fountain made of travertine that now it's coming, here you are. Is a beautiful example of a public fountain because not anybody had a private tap with a fresh cold water in your house. But here we have a fountain with a few different corners. One is the face of Venus with this beautiful hairstyle. Well, the face is almost destroyed, but believe me, it is Venus. And on the opposite side, we have Venere or Venus, Anadiomene, which is another Greek word representing Venus squeezing her hairs. Why so many Greek words in a Roman city? Because don't forget that the background of the region where we are, it's Greek. Neapolis, Napoli, the new city. That's why the library of the Villa dei Papyri found there with a lot of books, well, scrolls of papyrus in a Greek language. Because here, especially in Herculaneum, people lived with the so-called Hellenistic luxury style. And in this corner, we have the pillar for the public aqueduct, built at the time of Augustus, and nearby the original fistula, which is another Latin word, telling us that this is the original lead pipe system, lead material that killed more than wars in the Roman time with the lead poisoning. And overlooking this view of this other cardo, we have an inscription telling us that was forbidden to throw waste and things in the public fountains, otherwise you could get a punishment, and the beautiful view of the colonnades on both sides of the sidewalk. This is the richest streets of the city. And instead to have that cement building used for modern exhibition today, where we have stored an incredible carbonized wooden boat, there was the view of the island of Capri.
Okay, so I was going to interrupt you here, Raf, just to point out this inscription. It's one of my favorites because it gives you an idea of everyday life in this gorgeous city. So if you look at it, it's hard to get a really good photo of it, but what it is, it's an inscription telling us that if you dump stercus, which is manure, anywhere near this, it's a castellum aquae, it's a water tower which is going, see, it's going downhill. It's a way for the water to actually, it's too steep a hill. So it's a way of getting the water down the hill. It's saying that if you dump any kind of manure or garbage anywhere near that water tower, that you'd be fined at sesterces 4 asses, 4 glasses of wine is how I see it. And as well, and if you're a slave, you'd be whipped. In other words, they have some kind of a notion of pollution, don't they? So that's why I think this is an important inscription. Over to you.
Now we arrived, but it's quite busy. I want to just wait a few seconds. In the meantime, that we are going to wait to in this incredible house with the beautiful mosaics, I want to show you a small shop where we can have the original amphoras still placed there. And the amphoras, they were used to sell olive oil, wine, grain, or the famous garum, the so-called fish sauce. I know that the net of this door is quite strong, but you can see the original ceiling, the original shelves used to sell wine in this small shop. Well, this was like a kind of wine bar. And the second floor, which is still intact, completely destroyed the ceiling, and we can have the remain of a small bed made of bronze. So
can I talk about this? I keep on having favorite buildings, but do you know what? I've gone up a little bit to look upstairs. So I've gone on a little ramp taking you to the house of the Black Salon. And because what I want to look at is this house, which is on the mezzanine floor. It's a flat. So there's the wine shop underneath, and on top is the flat. So Raffaele is showing you, and Alessandra is showing you where these amphorae are. These are all wine amphorae. So all the amphorae that you're looking at have different shapes. The gigantic olive oil ones, and these are wine amphorae. Now take a look at what it used to look like. They've taken the amphorae out, but there are amphorae on top of shelves. It is intact. So the wine shop is there, and look at all of the shelves. The shelves there are actually, that's carbonized wood. So what you're looking at there is a real shelf, you know, those are real wine shelves. And there is the flat on top. So if you have a look at that, it's just so interesting. So on the top left-hand side, I'm going to point this out with the laser pointer so you can see it. This is a bed. Do you see? This is a little bit of corner of a bed. Right by the bed, they found a spelling list. So the son of the wine merchant is learning how to spell. And right here, my favorite ever little detail, it is a latrine. So they use the, you know, right next to the kitchen. They had kitchens and latrine in the same place because they had no idea of contagion. This is the toilet. Anyway, so it's a gorgeous way of looking inside of someone's house here. And there you are, Raffaele, right inside the exciting house of the Neptune and Amphitrite.
So we are inside this house, and I'm waiting just the queue for the most important mosaics that we can see in Herculaneum, and one of the richest of all the Roman Empire, which is Neptune and Amphitrite, his wife, placed nearby the wall. In this house, there was not a space for a big garden to prepare. That's why the owner called the best pictors and the architects to create this viridarium, which is this corner of paradise made with these great mosaics made of glass, and the yellow color of some of the tessera are made with real gold. And to the left corner, this piece of temple, which is like a sort of larario, a house god corner, represented with the peacocks, girland flowers, and the original seashells used for us to make a carbon-14 datation, and above over there, some masks with the original color on top. So I'm also leaving now the room because there are also people that they must see this place. You know, today it's a Sunday and it's a beautiful day. So a lot of locals, travelers are going to explore, and thanks God, their beauty nearby themselves.
You know what I'm going to do? So while you walk there, Raf, I'm going to show you what it looked like. This is dining al fresco Roman style. So it is a triclinium. So in other words, it had 3 clinae, you know, 3 per person on these couches, and they would have been reclining there. And here's a photograph. This is what you looked at earlier. This is Neptune, the god of the sea, and Amphitrite, his wife, who's also called Salacia, where we get the word salacious because she was up to no good sometimes. And here's where Raf was looking, you know, here's some more details. So here, do you see what I mean? These are where you had the couches. There's the Neptune and Amphitrite mosaic. And here is the opposite side, what he called a lararium. The lares are the household gods. Here's some close-ups. Gorgeous, isn't it? This is Neptune showing off his toned, somber body. And this is his wife. They always hold the veils when they're, in a marriage gesture. And here, this is a detail of the stags, This is what he was telling me. These are vitreous tesserae. In other words, this blue is cobalt. It's made out of glass. And then they make tesserae from there. And this is what a lot of them have. It's a tragic mask in order to give drama to the whole thing. You're at the house of the wooden partition, my favorite house.
Yes,
great to see
I'm
the
sorry,
facade.
I want to go inside now because
Absolutely.
there are no people.
So I'm going to leave it to you.
This is a good chance to go inside. Yes, thank you. So we are inside the beautiful atrium of this unique house. It's a good chance to see without people because there is a queue waiting outside. So here we have the great mensa, the table original, made of marble, used for the owners, well, to receive gifts from the clientes. And as Alessandro is showing you there, we have the original feet with this so-called griffon legs style. And right in the middle, we have the beautiful impluvium made with the original marble. And imagine right in the middle, the great statues of maybe supposed to be a Cupid or a dolphin with the water games. The cistern is placed to the underground, and above the ceiling, you have the light well called compluvium, used for the collection of rainwater. But what is great, this house, worth a visit to Herculaneum, is the example of the oldest door in the world. More than 2,000 years old door, made of wood, carbonized, and found in the place, as you can see. So this door was used to share the public part of the house with the office, the so-called tablinum, and the peristylium, the private part behind there. The door is grand, and that means that the house belonged to somebody with a lot of money. And also the original borchia, these ornaments made of bronze, used as a decoration for the original panels. And then you had your own privacy, because when you were talking with someone and there were other people waiting in the atrium, you could close them. Nobody could see yourself anymore. And another surprise in this house, it's right in this room, where we have an original bed, a bed frame, carbonized as well, and still on the spot when it was found 100 years ago. It's a unique chance to see these important objects of our normal day life. And before leaving the house, we have an entire room completely made with a beautiful mosaics, black and white on the floor, and even the ceiling of the Roman house was painted. I was mentioning before the fourth Roman styles. This is again a fourth Roman style, but the oldest style, the first, which is called the fake marble decoration, was used in the 2nd century before Christ. This one here that we can see with these great mosaics was a room painted in the time in between the earthquake of 62 and the eruption of 79 AD. Beautiful color, and the red, the cinnabar, but the green was obtained with the so-called malachite or malachite. And now I want to go with you to the top-notch place of Herculaneum site, which is the shoreline. So we have a long walk reaching the shoreline. And in the meantime, I will show you also some entrances of important houses, like the House of Ears, Casa de Cervi. But this is another great view of the city, how it was, especially because it's the most intact corner, with these scaffoldings restoring and saving these graticium walls. So most of the time, the landlord, they used to build an extra room to get more rent, more money. And this cardo was reaching down the shoreline, where we are going right now.
While you're going there, Raph, I thought I'd go over that House of the Wooden Partition. So this is the partition we were looking at earlier. This is from the top, where there are bedrooms on the first floor, right? So don't forget there's a first floor too. This is the partition. Now, when they excavated in the Bourbon period, they trashed this, sadly. But it's a partition separating. This is the atrium, right, where everybody could walk in. It's important to get a grasp of what these houses are like. absolutely everybody could walk into the atrium. Atrium was where you show off your family. You have a family tree, you have family bus, things like that. This is a tablinum where you meet your clients. Separating the atrium and the tablinum is this wooden partition. It's the only one we have anywhere, so it's really precious. And so here we are. Then that's looking at. Here is a close-up of the wooden partition. Look at the floor itself. It's an opus signinum floor. So there's this cacio pesto, this kind of broken up party shirt with those, those little white bits. A close-up. You know, it's not even carbonized wood. It's real wood that survived that intact. Here's the atrium. So we're looking right into what the fauces are, the fauce that Raffaele was talking about. And you can see there's the atrium with the impluvium. Do you see that? This is where you gather the water, and there's a cistern right beside it. That is what an atrium looks like. Down over to you, Raf.
We are right in this important crossroad that I wanted to stop here to show you an important difference. I think that the archaeology is an incredible science that I wanted to combine my job as a tour guide with my background, because even if you see the different color of the road, please, Alessandra can show you this fact. We have right in the middle of the road two different types of stones. One is basalt and one is limestone. Only this portion of Herculaneum has got limestone on the floor. Why? Because this is the door facing the seaside. And that was the place where people could enter for the first time in the city. So to impress more the visitor, of the traveler, the council of the city wanted to create this only door with this different and expensive road. And the first building important that you could meet at the entrance of the house was the so-called Palestra. The Palestra was the training center, not just for the body, as we can wrongly translate as a gym, but was also the place where the Roman Empire was creating people who could lead cities anywhere in the 2/3 of known world. And I want to go with you inside the Palestra through the big columns, where we have the chance to see how important are the excavations in this archaeological site, and especially 2 years ago, a portion of the coast made of lard, the mud, fell down. So this area was closed for many, many years, and we are lucky today to see the entrance of a Roman Palestra, or well, similar to the Greek gymnasium, intact. Here you are. In the middle of this Palestra, there was a beautiful cross-shaped pool with a fountain representing a snake with 4 heads, the famous Hydria that the young Hercules killed when he was a child, when he was a baby in his crib. So everything in the city, it's like a kind of storytelling of Hercules' life. And the Palestra had these beautiful porticos with the columns made of bricks and painted like marble. So this was an incredible chance for all of you to see this super place that was closed till a few months ago. And now, reaching down the shoreline, Eireann, we will pass nearby the Casa dei Cervi, the House of Deers, which is one of the most spectacular home on a terrace placed on the city walls facing the seaside. Over to you with a few and beautiful picture that you prepared for us.
Well, you know, if I were to own a house in Herculaneum, it would be this one. God willing. Here I took it from the seaside. Do you remember there's a very beginning when we first saw Raffaele? We were looking at that pergola going all the way down there. So it is a city. It's got a gorgeous view there. And also here it is inside. So you can see this is from the garden. Do you see that pediment? That pediment is actually showing the triclinium from the outside, you know, and it's, you know, it's this pediment here. In other words, it's showing just how opulent it is. And look at all of these statues here, which gave the name city. It's the village its name. So it's a domus. These are the stags. It's called House of the Stags or House of the Deer. You can see why. This is a plaster cast of the statue. The original is in the Man, the Museum of Archaeology in Naples. And here's the inside. And this is something you really need to get. So Raffaele is right outside the House of the Stags right now. I'm going to stop for a second just to show you where the House of the Stags is. It's brilliant.
Yes, it's brilliant. And also, Alessandro is showing us the mosaics placed at the entrance. I want to add something important, that this house has got not an atrium.
I was just going to say that. You stole my thunder, you.
Yeah.
No,
it's a house without an atrium. It's incredible.
Yeah, so there you are. So you're going inside the city. I don't know if you remember the house of the wooden partition. You see all the way through the house. Well, actually, what you have in Herculaneum, you have a much better system of collecting water than in Pompeii. So you don't necessarily have to have atrium houses. So therefore, what I'm going to show you here is exactly what Raffaele was about to show you in his, what he was in. And it's actually, you can see the balcony in the top there. That's modern. That's not ancient wood, but it's no atrium. In other words, there's no impluvium gathering the water because they don't need to. These are wealthy people who have plumbed water. They've got water coming in, don't need to preserve it in the cisterns. And also there are wells in Herculaneum where you can't have them in Pompeii because the water level is lower. I'm going to show you some more paintings here. So this is the triclinium I talked about. A triclinium is a dining room where it's lined with clinae or beds. You can see black. Do you see that shiny black? We think, oh, why would you have that color? That is the most expensive color. Blue and black. A really fast black is hard to get. So it's a really expensive. And the owners of the house are saying that they're wealthy. Look at the gorgeous, you have the frescoes lining, instead of having a peristyle, it has a cryptoporticus. So in other words, covered over peristyle, and you have some of these still lives. Look at the glass, Who said that perspective was invented by Giotto? No, right? No, they have it here in the ancient world. Look at the, look at the idea of a still life, Again, it's not Flemish, is it? It's here, it's ancient. And then I'm going to stop you there, and I'm going to preempt what Raffaele is going to show you right now.
Thank you. And also the other concept of the atrium was for the politicians. The house of the dears belonged maybe to 2 freed slaves. So they had no reason to have an atrium to meet clientes for political reasons, because the freed slaves, were able to vote, but they could build their cursus honorum, a new life for their son, but not for themselves. So, and that's the overview of the house of the dears just below the city walls. And where we are on the terrace of Marco Nonio Balbo, a man who need a lot of atriums, because was a man and a family that they had a lot of political relationship with imperial family and with all over the Roman Empire. And here, with this original plate, we can read like a CV, a curriculum vitae, what they did for the city of Herculaneum and who they were. They built the suburban bathhouse. They built the theater, the marketplace, the so-called Macellum of Herculaneum near after the earthquake of 62. So the richest family, they wanted to have the memorial, sepulchro for Marco Nonio Balbo right in front of the sea. The first thing that you should see coming with a boat, and imagine who could come with a boat to a city, was a rich fleet ship of family. They have to meet the family who had a power in this corner. Unfortunately, I don't have any picture on my phone of the suburban bathhouse, but I will send to Alistair the picture that I took inside, and I will send to our audience, because this suburban bathhouse is the most stunning place that you can see in Herculaneum. I had a chance to go inside when I was studying the baths inside there. I will show you and I will send you through the email. And also, going down to the terrace, we have the chance to see the ancient warehouse, where in 1981, the professor Giuseppe Maggi had a brilliant idea. He wanted to dig, as director of the excavations, this portion facing the seaside, because we should know that the bradisismo, the up and down of the coast, literally moved the land farther to the sea, about 400 meters. But moving with machines and then going with the trowel, till the bottom of the shoreline, the professor cried because he was there. And imagine all the people during the eruption rumbling down together in the darkness with the gas, with the lucerne, with the oil lamps to the seaside waiting for boats. Nobody arrived. And the last house, the cemetery of Herculaneum, let's say this word, was down to the docks, to the shoreline. And welcome to the end of Herculaneum, where inside these small arches, you have the chance to see some of the original skeletons at Alessandra. It's coming closer to myself, so you have the right angle to see some of the skeletons, some of the victims found in the place where you can see now.
Raf, should I show you some? Here they are. It's really gruesome, actually. You're lucky to have been taught by that great man, Giuseppe Maggi. And here are the 300 skeletons. And there's a preponderance of women and children here, and you can see they're huddled together. And they found some really interesting stuff about these people. So they estimated the age expectancy, the number of children that women had, the fabulous teeth. They have less than 2 cavities per person, and there's a lot of fluoride in the water, so their teeth are excellent. Here they are. Of course, it's really sad. And there's the most staggering thing recently they found was that there's a man with, very muscular man. You can see from his femur, which is really big, and he has been wounded. He's been always thought to be a soldier. And Francesco Cirano, the director of Herculaneum, just recently revealed more details about him, saying that there was he had a bag of coins and a gladius with him, a sword. So it is thought that actually he is a soldier. I'm not sure that Cirano is right to think that this is one of the sailors or soldiers sent by Pliny the Elder. We can't really know that at all, but certainly he's a sailor. And you were talking about this boat. It is staggering, and it is now, when you get to Herculaneum, and I'm sure you all do want to go there next year, what you'll see is this is the stern of the boat. You can see with the rudder mechanism on top. Here's the rudder, where they place the rudder. And here it is inside. It had, places for 3 oarsmen, and you can see it's just intact. And here it is. So it was found on top of some tiles and then buried by other tiles. There's no way that this boat could leave anywhere because there was the water was choppy, so Pliny the Younger talks about a tsunami. So it's really very sad. And here they actually have the oars that have still survived. So this is a telling testament to how the people tried to escape in every way, and that's why they're in the boat sheds but couldn't leave. So they all died miserably. 2 minutes after that first nuée ardente, which actually boiled their brains and charred their bodies. Down to you, Raf.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. We are at the end of our tour, and I hope that you could really enjoy this walk through the ancient city of Herculaneum. That, believe me, it took me 5 months to actually to get the permission for this incredible archaeological site.